Greetings! This is the Extendables presenting our post-mortem video. We're going to talk about Renegade17, the game that we just made, and talk about its development, what went right, what went wrong, that sort of thing. So, naturally, the first thing we should be asking is, what is Renegade17? What kind of game is it? In short, Renegade17 is a first-person shooter game inspired by the seminal classic Half-Life 2. Other influences for the game in both mechanics and presentation include Portal, Doom, GoldenEye, Perfect Dark, Mirror's Edge, and Ghost Runner. I would say it mostly sticks to the core gameplay formula of Half-Life 2, but it mixes up the gameplay with more advanced movement options and an overall faster pace. There are also much fewer dedicated story moments compared to Half-Life, with a greater focus on environmental storytelling.
The player is moved around the world laterally using the W, A, S, D keys. In order to move the camera, the player pivots the mouse to look around the play space. Physics objects are placed around the level in order for the player to utilize them in solving puzzles, placing them in certain areas or on certain things in order to progress through the level, or throwing them at certain objects in order to make a way for them to cross through. This is also coupled with high-octane gameplay that the player will utilize the environment and weapons around him in order to clear out enemies and vehicles alike. An ever-evolving weapon roster that the player will accumulate over the game, as well as multiple abilities that the player will pick up in order to traverse certain terrain by double jumping, dashing, grappling, as well as wall running, will allow them to combat the various forms of enemies the player will find throughout the levels, such as shotgun troops and much larger vehicles. This game will take you through many different vistas and environments, each varying from the last, that are sure to keep the player captivated.
Some of our game's features and mechanics that we are most proud of include intelligent AI soldiers, zombies, and other monsters, as well as vehicles such as the aerial dropship and hunter choppers, which will deploy zipline troops and drop bombs respectively, as well as the ground-based armored personnel carrier, which will fire on the player and also deploy between the soldiers. We have also included vehicle-based combat with the player able to control a futuristic airboat featuring a heavy machine gun to engage hordes of enemies on the move. Additional extra features were added to our game's gravity gun and physics system, such as being able to translate and rotate held objects, as well as freezing those objects midair via a stasis ability. Next, we have given the player numerous movement and mobility options, such as double jumping, dashing, wall running, time dilation, grappling hook, and cable swing abilities. Fun extras also include a cyberpunk-inspired katana that can cleave soldiers and zombies in half, as well as an original script and voice acting, and art assets created by our collaboration with Game Art students.
As far as what techniques, processes, and ideas worked well during development, two major ideas worked well being our physics-based object manipulation and interactions, as well as the enemies, combat variation, and the different types of enemies and the combat between them. For processes, we have things like each AI having a unique behavior tree, whether it be humanoid, a small creature, or a vehicle. I guess under techniques would be us using Confluence, Jira, and Discord for most of our meetings outside of school, to where we'd write down our references, information, anything where we could essentially help us plan out and organize all of our work. One of the best things that we went through process-wise was in game balancing. Everybody was able to make 2-level prototypes that really allowed us to mess around with different mechanics, mix and match things, and led to a more complete system, as well as helping us learn off each other through different things. And last but not least, one of the best processes we went through was not having a team leader, but having everybody on the team be able to make decisions together.
As for what techniques, processes, or ideas did not work well during development, we ran into issues with both apex destruction and buoyancy systems, which were tricky, occasionally presented problems, or provided limited functionality. But we also ran into issues with animating existing skeletal meshes. We had to do quite a few workarounds to get the visual behavior we wanted, such as creating some custom rigging. The next issue was Unreal Vehicles, at least at first. Getting that possession functionality working between the first-person character and the vehicle was a little difficult, and then ensuring camera placement, mesh placement, and code was optimal to implement our airboat vehicle properly. It cost us a lot of time that could have been spent elsewhere. And then lastly, the persistent level. When it comes to setting up a persistent level, if you aren't super familiar with it and or you have a huge project, I would suggest staying away from it purely because it's another process that can take up a lot of time. This was the case for us due to debugging, setting up level streaming, learning how to edit individual levels within the persistent level, optimizing the performance of the game, yada yada, the list goes on. This was time that we could have spent designing better gameplay scenarios, building new mechanics, and polishing levels. That being said, we learned a great deal from it, so I would say it's worth considering depending on your team size and capabilities.
The skills that I've learned and found most useful that I picked up across the capstone process is programming with a team in mind and splitting things into components, so that way that makes it easier for people to work. We don't have to be fighting over who checking what out. And our skills, our blueprinting across the board has increased quite a bit. And whenever we start blueprinting something, we now are keeping everything modular so they can fit different scenarios. And we've also gotten used to using breakpoints to help track down those bugs. And we've also learned how to communicate problems effectively to our team so we can get the help that we need to fix those problems. And another good skill that we picked up is using the assets we created to make sure that it fits the level and the player progression curve throughout the game evenly, so that way there's a cohesive difficulty increase throughout the game, and it makes sense to the player and makes a good gameplay experience.
Our game has come a long way from our initial vision. Starting with an 18-year-old game, we were lucky enough to go further than we expected using modern tools. This gave us an amazing game that stands on the shoulders of our influences. With intense combat and varying ways to handle problem solving, the player gets to experience the classic fun situations such as launching explosive barrels, alongside new situations that involve our own mechanics. Our countless blueprints and under-the-hood systems keeps the gameplay streamlined and relatively easy to implement as designers. Our AI soldiers came a very long way from where they started, and all the time spent on them was worth it to get the desired behavior. Our decision to have the soldiers and zombies fight each other was something that was decided on the fly. This mentality of just go for it, I think, helps make our game stand out and give us a lot of tools to work with when making levels. Together, we have completed over 500 JIRA issues during the course of about 1,350 hours of work. This mindset of embracing the creativity of each individual's work is what really unlocked the potential of our project and bring it to where it is now. I would like to end by giving a special thanks from all of us on the Extendables to our professors and instructors, especially for playtesting our game throughout the process. It is with your feedback and guidance that our hard work and efforts continue to be in the right direction to give us this amazing piece of work that will live in our portfolios forever. Thank you.